When I refused to sell my jewelry, my husband's greed turned into rage, and his eyes burned with fury. He picked up a heavy clay pot from the shelf, and before I could react, he hit me hard on the head with full force, striking my head. The pot shattered upon impact, and I collapsed to the floor, dazed and bleeding as warm streams of blood ran down my face. Trembling, I fumbled for my phone, desperate to call the police. But as I began dialing, an even more horrifying event unfolded, one I could never have foreseen. My name is Julie, and I'm 29 years old. 3 years ago, I thought I had my life perfectly planned. I was working as a marketing consultant in Springfield, enjoying my independence and focusing on building a stable future for myself. Little did I know, a chance encounter at a friend's wedding would change the course of my life. I met Adam at that wedding. He was 32 at the time, charming, and working as a financial advisor. He had a way of making everyone around him feel like the center of attention. When he walked over to introduce himself, I couldn't help but notice his warm smile and confident demeanor. "Hi, I'm Adam," he said, extending his hand. "I don't think we've met before, but I couldn't let you leave without saying hello." I smiled, shaking his hand. "Nice to meet you, Adam. I'm Julie. I'm friends with the bride." From that moment, we were inseparable for the rest of the evening. We talked about everything, our careers, hobbies, and even our favorite travel destinations. He made me laugh like I hadn't in years, and by the end of the night, I knew there was something special about him. After the wedding, Adam and I began seeing each other regularly. He would surprise me with thoughtful gestures, my favorite coffee on busy mornings, handwritten notes, and spontaneous weekend trips to nearby towns. It felt like a fairy tale, and I quickly fell for him. A year later, he proposed during a trip to the mountains. We were sitting by a bonfire when he pulled out a small velvet box and asked me to marry him. His words were heartfelt and sincere, and without hesitation, I said yes. Our wedding was a beautiful yet simple affair. We moved into a cozy apartment in Springfield, where we started building our lives together. I continued my job, and Adam's career as a financial advisor seemed steady. We often talked about our shared dreams of buying a house and starting a family, and everything felt like it was falling into place. The first year of our marriage was blissful. Adam and I settled into our routines, supporting each other in our careers and planning for our future. Every evening, we'd sit down for dinner, talking about our day and dreaming about the house we wanted to buy in a quiet neighborhood with a big backyard. But as time passed, I noticed subtle changes in Adam. He started talking more about status, appearances, and how important it was for people to perceive us as successful. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured it was just part of his personality, and we both worked hard to maintain a comfortable lifestyle. One evening, as we were having dinner, Adam brought up the idea of upgrading our car. "Julie," he said casually, cutting into a steak, "don't you think it's time we get something that reflects how far we've come? A luxury car would be perfect for us." I looked up, surprised. "Adam, we've talked about this. We're saving for a house, remember? A car like that would eat into our savings." He smiled, but there was a hint of frustration behind it. "It's not just about us, Julie. It's about how we present ourselves. Imagine pulling up to meetings or events in a car that turns heads. It's an investment in our image." I shook my head, trying to keep the conversation light. "Our current car works just fine. Let's focus on the house first, and then we can think about upgrades." Adam didn't press the issue that night, but I could see he wasn't satisfied with my response. Over the next few weeks, his comments about needing a new car became more frequent, and I started to feel the pressure building. One evening, Adam came home with brochures for luxury cars, spreading them out on the coffee table like they were treasure maps. "Look at this one," he said enthusiastically, pointing at a sleek black model. "It's perfect for us, Julie. Just imagine driving this around town." I sighed, setting down my laptop. "Adam, we've been through this. We can't afford it right now. We're still working toward our down payment for the house." He leaned back on the couch, his smile fading. "We can afford it if you sell some of your jewelry." The words hit me like a punch. "What?" I asked, my voice sharp. "You want me to sell my jewelry? Those pieces are priceless to me, Adam. They're gifts from my parents, and some of them have been in my family for generations. Adam waved off my concern as if it were nothing. Julie, it's just jewelry. It's sitting in a box most of the time anyway. This is something we can actually use. I stood up, my heart racing. No, Adam. I'm not selling my jewelry for a car. That's not happening. His expression darkened. You're being selfish. I'm asking for one thing, Julie. You can't even do that for me? Selfish. I said, my voice rising. I've supported you in everything, Adam. I've been working long hours, contributing to our savings, and keeping this household together. But I won't sacrifice something so meaningful just to boost your ego. His face twisted in anger. Boost my ego? You don't understand how important this is, do you? Fine. If you won't support me, maybe this marriage isn't worth it. The ultimatum hung in the air like a blade. Are you seriously threatening me with divorce over a car? I asked, my voice trembling. If you can't do this one thing for me, he said coldly, then maybe I made a mistake. The next few days were tense. Adam barely spoke to me, and when he did, it was only to bring up the car again. I tried to focus on work and avoid the growing strain between us, but I could feel the weight of his resentment every time we were in the same room. One evening, I came home late from work, exhausted and looking forward to a quiet dinner. Instead, I found Adam pacing the living room, his face flushed with anger. On the coffee table sat a stack of bills and the brochures for luxury cars he had shown me before. We need to talk, he said, his voice tight. I sighed, setting my bag down. Not tonight, Adam. I'm tired. This can't wait, he snapped, stepping in front of me. I've made up my mind. You're going to sell the jewelry, and we're getting the car. End of discussion. I stared at him in disbelief. End of discussion? Adam, we've been through this. I'm not selling my jewelry. You can't just make this decision for both of us. He crossed his arms, his eyes narrowing. I'm not asking, Julie. I've worked too hard to be treated like this. If you don't sell the jewelry, I'll leave. I'll file for divorce, and you can keep your precious trinkets. His words cut deep, but I refused to let him see how much they hurt. If that's how little this marriage means to you, Adam, then go ahead. But I'm not giving in to your selfish demands. For a moment, he just stared at me, his face a mask of fury. Then, without warning, he grabbed the clay vase sitting on the shelf nearby. You think you can talk to me like that? He shouted, his voice echoing through the apartment. Before I could react, he raised the vase high above his head and swung it down with brutal force. The vase shattered against my skull, the sharp sound filling the room. Pain exploded in my head, and I stumbled backward, hitting the floor with a thud. As I lay there, dazed and bleeding, the world seemed to move in slow motion. I could hear Adam breathing heavily above me, but I couldn't bring myself to look up. The warmth of blood trickling down the side of my face and the throbbing in my head were all I could focus on. As I lay on the cold, hard floor, the pain in my head was unbearable, but a stronger feeling surged within me. Anger. I mustered every ounce of strength I had left, pushing myself up onto my hands and knees. My vision was blurry, and my head throbbed, but I refused to stay down. I glared up at Adam, who stood frozen, his face pale, as if he couldn't believe what he had done. My voice, weak at first, grew steady as I forced the words out. You've crossed the line, Adam, I said, my voice trembling but filled with fury. You think you can hurt me and get away with it? You'll pay for this. He didn't respond, just stood there, his chest heaving. I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed 911. My voice cracked as I spoke to the operator.
Help, I said.
My husband, he attacked me. I'm bleeding. Please send someone. Adam's eyes widened in panic as he heard the words. Julie, wait. Don't do this, he stammered, stepping toward me. I turned away from him, holding the phone tightly, ignoring his pleas. The address is 14 Pine Avenue. Please hurry, I said, my voice shaking as I ended the call. The sight of my determination seemed to break something in Adam. He stood there for a second, then suddenly grabbed his car keys and bolted out the door without saying another word. The sound of the door slamming echoed in the silence, But I didn't feel relief yet. My body trembled as I leaned against the couch, holding the towel to my bleeding head, waiting for help to arrive. Within minutes, flashing red and blue lights lit up the street outside. 2 officers knocked on my door, and I opened it cautiously, my head still throbbing. They took one look at me, blood trickling down my temple, and their expressions turned serious. "Ma'am, are you okay?" one of them, Officer Garcia, asked gently. I need help," I whispered, stepping back to let them in. They helped me to the couch, and one of them began asking questions while the other called for paramedics. "Can you tell us what happened?" Officer Garcia asked, pulling out a notepad. I nodded, swallowing hard as I began to recount the events. My voice wavered as I explained how the argument escalated, how Adam grabbed the vase and attacked me in his rage. I didn't leave anything out, even though each word felt like a knife reopening the wounds. By the time I finished, tears were streaming down my face. Officer Garcia nodded, his expression firm. "We've issued a warrant for his arrest. Don't worry, he won't get far. You've done the right thing by calling us." The paramedics arrived shortly after and treated my wound, wrapping my head in a bandage. They recommended I go to the hospital for further evaluation, but all I wanted was to get away from the apartment that now felt like a prison. I packed a small bag, my hands shaking as I stuffed in essentials. My parents' house was the only place I could think of where I'd feel safe. As soon as I arrived, my mother opened the door, her face a mixture of concern and shock when she saw my injuries. "Julie," she cried, pulling me into her arms. "What happened? Who did this to you?" I broke down, sobbing into her shoulder as I tried to explain. My father stood nearby, his face dark with anger as he listened to every word. "That man," he muttered through gritted teeth. "He's a coward. You need to make sure he faces the consequences." My mother nodded, holding me close. "We'll stand by you, Julie. But you need to talk to a lawyer. Someone who can guide you through this." The next morning, my father accompanied me to a lawyer's office. Mr. Carter, a sharp and confident attorney in his early 40s, greeted us with a firm handshake. He listened carefully as I recounted the incident, his expression serious but reassuring. "I'm sorry you've had to go through this, Julie," he said. "But you've taken the first step by contacting the police. Now we need to make sure Adam is held accountable." Mr. Carter laid out a plan, explaining how I could file for a restraining order and pursue assault charges. "This isn't just about justice," he said firmly. "It's about ensuring your safety and reclaiming your life." I nodded, feeling a flicker of hope for the first time since the attack. "I don't want him to get away with this," I said, my voice steady. "He needs to face the consequences." "And he will," Mr. Carter assured me. "You're not alone in this." After my meeting with Mr. Carter, we began working on building a solid case against Adam. Mr. Carter emphasized the importance of gathering evidence to ensure that Adam could not evade justice. "We'll need every possible piece of evidence," Mr. Carter explained. "Medical reports, witness statements, photographs of your injuries, and any other documentation that can support your claim." I visited the hospital to obtain copies of my medical reports, detailing the injuries I had sustained from Adam's attack. The doctors provided records that described the severity of the head wound and the treatment I received. Mr. Carter arranged for a professional photographer to take clear pictures of my injuries, ensuring that the visual evidence was undeniable. The police provided a copy of the 911 call I made during the attack, which captured my trembling voice and the urgency of the situation. Officer Garcia submitted his report, which included his observations when he arrived at the scene. The paramedics also provided statements about the condition they found me in. Mr. Carter and I returned to the apartment under police supervision to document the broken vase and any other signs of the struggle. The photographs captured the shattered pieces scattered across the floor. As I focused on gathering evidence, the police were actively searching for Adam. Over the next few days, they raided several places he was known to frequent: his office, his friend's house, and even his gym. Adam, however, seemed to have gone into hiding. One evening, I received a call from Officer Garcia. "Miss Julie, I wanted to update you. We've apprehended Adam. He was found trying to leave the city and is now in custody." Relief washed over me as I ended the call. Finally, Adam would face the consequences of his actions. The day of the first court hearing arrived, and I felt a mix of nerves and determination as I entered the courthouse. Mr. Carter walked beside me, carrying a neatly organized file filled with all the evidence we had gathered. His calm demeanor and reassuring words kept me grounded. "This is where justice begins, Julie," he said as we walked toward the courtroom. "We've built a strong case, and Adam's actions will speak for themselves." Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was heavy with anticipation. Adam sat at the defendant's table, his face pale and tense. He avoided looking in my direction. The judge, Honorable Judge Taylor, took her seat, and the proceedings began. Mr. Carter stood confidently as he addressed the court. "Your Honor, we are here today to present evidence of a violent assault committed by the defendant, Adam, against my client, Julie. The evidence will clearly demonstrate the severity of his actions and the need for accountability." The medical records were submitted first, detailing the head injury I had sustained. The hospital's report included statements from doctors confirming that the wound was consistent with a blunt force trauma caused by a heavy object. Mr. Carter displayed the photographs of my injuries and the broken vase to the court. Gasps could be heard from those in attendance as the images left little room for doubt. The recording of my 911 call was played in the courtroom. My trembling voice, pleading for help, echoed in the silent chamber, painting a vivid picture of the fear I experienced. Officer Garcia testified about what he witnessed upon arriving at the scene, describing my injuries and Adam's absence. The paramedic statements corroborated his account, further solidifying the evidence. Adam's lawyer attempted to downplay the incident, claiming it was a moment of heated argument and that Adam did not intend to harm me. However, the overwhelming evidence made it clear that his actions were deliberate and violent. Mr. Carter stood to counter the defense. "Intentions do not erase the consequences of one's actions, Your Honor. Adam's attack left my client physically injured and emotionally scarred. This is not a case of mere argument. It is a clear act of domestic violence." After hours of testimony and evidence review, Judge Taylor called for order. The courtroom fell silent as she delivered her judgment. Adam's actions were not only reckless but dangerous and deeply damaging, she began, her voice firm. "The evidence presented today leaves no doubt about his guilt. This court sentences Adam to 5 years in prison for aggravated assault, along with mandatory anger management counseling. Additionally, he is ordered to pay $25,000 in damages to Julie for her pain and suffering." The sound of the gavel striking the desk echoed through the room. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as the weight of the past weeks finally began to lift. Justice had been served. As the courtroom emptied, I lingered near the bench, trying to process everything. The verdict was a victory, but the emotional toll of the entire ordeal weighed heavily on me. Mr. Carter approached with a gentle smile, his presence a calming force amidst the storm of my thoughts. "You did it, Julie," he said, his voice steady. "Justice was served. Adam got what he deserved." I nodded, my voice soft. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Thank you, Mr. Carter." "Please," he replied, a hint of warmth in his tone. "Call me Noah." We walked out of the courthouse together, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a small glimmer of hope. Noah didn't just provide legal guidance. He had been a pillar of support throughout the process. His kindness and unwavering belief in my strength had carried me through the darkest days. Over the following weeks, Noah checked in on me regularly. At first, it was purely professional, updates about the case and ensuring Adam's compliance with the court's orders. But gradually, our conversations became more personal. He'd ask about my day, my plans, and how I was rebuilding my life. One afternoon, as we sat at a cafe discussing the final paperwork for the damages Adam was ordered to pay, Noah looked at me thoughtfully. "You're stronger than you think, Julie. Most people would have crumbled under what you've been through, but you've rebuilt yourself." I smiled, feeling a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. "I've had good support," I said, meeting his gaze. "You've been a big part of that." Noah's expression softened. "You deserve happiness, Julie. And if there's ever anything I can do to help beyond the case, you only need to ask." A few weeks later, with the case fully resolved and my life beginning to stabilize, Noah asked to meet me at a park near my parents' house. The crisp afternoon air carried the scent of blooming flowers, and the sound of children playing filled the background. As I arrived, I saw him standing by a bench, holding a small bouquet of daisies. My heart skipped a beat. Something about his demeanor was different, more serious, yet hopeful. "Julie," he began as I approached, "I've been meaning to tell you something for a while now." I tilted my head, curious. "What is it?" He took a deep breath, stepping closer. "I've watched you grow stronger with every step of this journey. You've inspired me in ways I didn't think were possible. I know this might seem sudden, but I can't let another moment pass without saying it." He knelt down, holding the bouquet in one hand and reaching into his pocket with the other to reveal a small velvet box. My breath caught as he opened it, revealing a simple but elegant ring. "Julie, I've fallen in love with you. I want to be the one to help you rebuild, to share in your joys and support you through your challenges. Will you give me the honor of spending the rest of our lives together?" Noah's words left me speechless. I stared at him, kneeling in front of me, with hope shining in his eyes. My heart raced as a whirlwind of emotions swirled in my mind. I had spent so much time rebuilding myself after Adam's betrayal and violence that I hadn't dared to imagine love again. But Noah was different. He had seen me at my lowest and never wavered in his support. His kindness, strength, and respect had helped me heal. Tears welled up in my eyes, but this time, they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of hope. "Yes, Noah," I said softly, a smile breaking across my face. "I would be honored to spend my life with you." A wave of relief and joy washed over his face as he stood, slipping the ring onto my finger. The moment felt surreal, as though the darkness of the past had finally given way to light. Noah pulled me into a gentle embrace, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly safe. Later that evening, we went to my parents' house to share the news. My mother gasped in delight when she saw the ring, pulling me into a tight hug. "Oh, Julie, I'm so happy for you," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. My father shook Noah's hand firmly, a proud smile on his face. "You've been there for my daughter when she needed it most," he said. "Welcome to the family, son." The warmth and love in the room filled me with gratitude. After everything I had been through, I finally felt like I was moving forward. Not just surviving, but thriving. Noah and I spent the next few weeks planning our future together. We decided to take things one step at a time, starting with finding a new place to call home. Together, we toured cozy apartments and charming houses, laughing and dreaming about the life we wanted to build. I returned to work as a marketing consultant, finding new joy and fulfillment in my career. Noah continued his work as a lawyer, but he always made time for us, whether it was a quiet dinner at home or a weekend hike in the nearby hills. 6 months later, on a sunny afternoon, Noah and I stood before our closest friends and family in a small, intimate ceremony. As we exchanged vows, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I had come. The scars of the past would always be a part of my story, but they no longer defined me. I had found love, hope, and strength in the aftermath of pain. As Noah slipped the wedding band onto my finger, he whispered, "This is just the beginning, Julie." I smiled, squeezing his hand. "I know, and I can't wait." Noah and I began our life together with a shared commitment to building something beautiful out of the broken pieces. We supported each other, celebrated each victory, and found joy in the small, everyday moments. The journey wasn't always easy, but with Noah by my side, I knew I could face anything. For the first time in years, my heart was full and my future was bright. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through Julie's story of resilience and hope. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to show your support by hitting the like button. It really helps the channel grow. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so share your opinions or any similar experiences in the comment section below. Your feedback means the world to me. And if you want to stay updated with more inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next story.